Welcome to our webinar, Turning EPBD Guidance into Practice, the role of building performance data for member states. My name is Andreas Hermeling. I'm a director at Guidehouse, leading the European Building Strategies team, and since January 2023, I have the pleasure to lead the consortium supporting the European Commission and their Building Stock Observatory. This webinar is co-organized by my BSO consortium and the Observe team, and I would like to thank Andre Lithieu, representing the Observe team, and Larissa Milo-Dale, representing my BSO team, for the really great job they've done in preparing this webinar. Based on the recently published EPBD guidance, this event aims to support member states in translating key provisions into actionable steps, especially regarding data infrastructure, national databases, linked also to reporting mechanisms. Today, we have a wonderful lineup of speakers, which will lead us through the first part of the webinar, both providing the regulatory background and great examples from selected member states. Then we'll move on to a panel discussion and debate featuring the speakers of today's session. As for housekeeping, please use the Q&A for dropping your questions. We'll do our best to address them all during the panel discussion. After the webinar, we'll be happy to distribute the presentations to all participants, and the same goes for the recording. But now, without further ado, let's start. And let me hand over to our first keynote speaker, Annette Jahn, Head of Sector at CNEA. Annette, who will introduce us to the role of EU-funded initiatives and support to member states, will start now. And Annette, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andreas, and a warm welcome also from my side. It's really impressive that you took the time this morning to work with us on this important matter of how to put the role of building performance into actionable steps, just as Andreas was very greatly putting it. Accurate, reliable, consistent data is essential for tracking the performance of buildings in a transparent manner. From our viewpoint, obviously designing and evaluating our policies. Now, the need for accurate data at all levels is obvious and probably a very recurring issue since probably decades. At the same time, and despite new technology and monitoring possibilities that you in the room are certainly very much doing your contribution and your endeavors to move that agenda forward, building data still remain a huge challenge. We have still important data gaps. We still know too little about the building stock in Europe. We need really your help in knowing precisely what's going on in the different member states from a European perspective. And we still, for example, have EPCs in many regions and locations which reflect the actual performance only insufficiently. So what can we do about that? I am having the honor of speaking on behalf of the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Program. Now, I'm aware that many of you are probably very familiar with the program. For those of you who don't know the program yet so well, I just give you a very short snapshot. We manage a European funding program which supports directly EU energy policy on the ground. Now, really, it is supporting your work to remove barriers, to remove gaps, or to fill gaps, to accelerate the transition at all levels. Concretely, the program gives support in key areas such as industry, heating and cooling, mobilizing investment on the ground, energy communities, and very central to the program, better buildings. Now, our building work is really central to the program, and notably, we work on giving support for transformative approaches to building renovation, to meaningful, better data, but notably, in turn, a meaningful uptake of policy instruments. So basically getting data to the place with a meaning as they are needed. Now, the program is ambitious. It empowers you to pursue your innovative approaches to make our building stock future-proof. It allows you, obliges you, if you wish, to also have the resources to work in project teams across the borders from different countries to share knowledge and experiences from peers in other European countries, but also other market perspectives. And I think a very impressive demonstration of the ability of the program to gather such stakeholders across different markets, but also across different perspectives, is really that gathering here this morning. Now, together with our colleagues from Horizon Europe, we have a long tradition to work on building data, data for policy instruments, notably, as I said, for example, as the EPCs, they have been on our agenda for about a decade. Now, what our interest is really to increase the market uptake of these tools. And many of you will know this very well because you're part of our work, you're part of either the EPC or, for example, SRI clusters. In that work, a major milestone really is the European Building Stock Observatory, which is driven and funded by the program over a couple of generations. The first edition was released back in 2016, but notably about 2-3 years ago, it was really completely overhauled and relaunched, and it's really becoming the key reference repository for EU building stock data, and that's really thanks to the hard work of the team behind the BSO, but also the absolute engagement of many stakeholders, many administrations, and many services across different sectors, including also across the European Commission. It's especially relevant, Andreas mentioned it already in its introduction, of course, the latest EPBD recast here, where the member states are required to set up the national databases and align work, feed into the Building Stock Observatory. But beyond that policy work, the Building Stock Observatory, obviously as a repository, as a central repository, is also, the mission statement is also to offer experts or even non-experts really a wealth of building-related data, structured and visualized across indicators in countries. Now, besides and beyond the Building Stock Observatory, we also follow and fund, including brand new projects which address building data to really have an ecosystem at our level in complementarity to all of the initiatives which are going on at all levels, in all countries, in different regions, locations. One important is, for example, the Project Observe, which is the co-host today, and which kicked off about 12 months ago and supports the member states in setting up their national database. We also, just a quick reference to a very new project, Breeze, for example, which just kicked off and which here puts data, as we said earlier, actionable, meaningful for use. Here it's about having harmonized energy performance data to improve building renovation strategies in a selection of countries throughout the EU. Now, in the good tradition, to close, of our experiences of clusters, such as the cluster on EPC, the cluster on SRI, we would also, in the future, support that we are connecting projects and bundling activities. We believe that this is really an added value that the program Life Clean Energy Transition can offer to the single experiences and to the single projects in order to really build a critical mass. And the clusters really have proven that the joint efforts increase the outreach, but also the impact of your activities really substantially. Going back to my first sentence, just to close, data key to design and evaluate policies at all levels. From our program perspective, we really have the benefit of accompanying very impactful projects and initiatives on the ground as much as at government levels. And here the program, as a message to you, remains available to support you in these efforts. And in this light, I'm very curious, notably, to listen to the different perspectives, the experiences of the different member states. And I wish you herewith a very informative, inspiring event with a lot of dense takeaways. Thank you very much. And with this, back to Andreas, and have a good morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annette, for this overview, which I think is really the perfect segue to our next keynote speaker, Bogdan Atanasiou, Senior Policy Officer at DG Energy of the European Commission. I think no one else can provide a better overview of the recently published set of guidance documents. Bogdan, the floor is yours for the next 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you so much for this warm introduction, and good morning, everyone. I am very pleased to be here and very pleased to see that you are so many showing the interest of the event created among the community, let's say. In my presentation, although I changed a bit the title compared to the agenda, I will cover the same thing. I will try to provide a very fast overview of the main provision of the energy performance of buildings directive in relation to data and data creation, let's say, not only data needs. Also, a very brief overview of the related documents, guidance documents from the recent EPBD package support we launched at the end of June this year, and a few words about EU Building Stock Observatory and National Energy Performance of Buildings databases yet to be created according to the EPBD recast. So before going to the specific part of the presentation, I would like to complement what Annette just said. Data, it's important numerical quantification of what we want to address through our policies and what we want to obtain in the field. It's very important. Without having numerical quantification, we are another person with an opinion. As you can see on the right side, a famous person, more famous than me, said many years ago. So data, it's very important across all the policy cycle, starting with the impact assessment. We have to do it always and to start with input data, acknowledging the reality in the field. Also, when to select the most appropriate policies to be implemented in the implementation process, most importantly in the monitoring and evaluation of the results of the policies put in place, and of course in communicating the result and mobilizing the stakeholders, the community, the citizens, to properly put in place what the policies aim to achieve. If we recall a bit the EPBD recast as adopted and entered into force in end of May last year, we can see, of course, the focus area of EPBD are wide. I will not insist on them, but we can see highlighted on this slide there are some specific articles, specific provisions regarding the structuring of the data at the level of the member states in national energy performance databases, but also there are some other provisions addressing digitization, data access to information, and data exchange. In this respect, probably EPBD is at the first big step towards modernization and digitization, and for that reason, I would say that these specific articles addressing the databases and data access to the information created through the tool of EPBD are vital and are a big step forward for us, because this clearly in time will shorten, will reduce the gap, informational gap we have currently regarding the building stock. Referring to the EPBD guidance support package we recently adopted and published, more precisely at the end of June this year. You can see it was a huge package. Probably most of you are already very much aware. So on one hand, we have a big package of guidance documents trying to offer more support and to show the Commission understanding about the implementation of certain key articles of the directive, notably in respect of the topic of this event regarding Article 22 on energy performance of buildings databases and Article 16 on data exchange. But together with the guidance support package, we also adopted and published a set of secondary legislation, notably, and in the context of this webinar, the implementing regulation establishing the common templates to transfer the information from national energy performance of buildings databases to the EU Building Stock Observatory. Moving to the next slide and going a bit deeper into the requirement of Article 22 of the directive. As I said already several times, the article asks the member states to set up energy performance of buildings databases where information from energy performance certificates, renovation passport, inspection reports, smart readiness indicators, a few others, has to be gathered. I already said, but it's good to say it again, the fact that this is a big step forward because everyone is aware EPBD created a lot of instruments producing data, assessing the building stock as the EPCs are. But so far we didn't we don't have everywhere a very good storage evidence, a systematic data collection of information created through these instruments. So this provision, it will be of very much importance, I would say, even it's not so visible and not so obvious in the context of the directive, because we'll provide for sure support to the member states, but also to the Commission and the community for having a better management and better use of information regarding the European building stock, and also will allow further quantitative assessments and estimates of the impact of policies, but also to shape new policies or to adjust what is not going so well so far. So speaking a bit about the requirements and about the way we see these national databases should, maybe you can go back a bit, Andrei. Speaking a bit about the structure we see that the national database should have. This is on the left side, it's a capture from the guidance document for the Article 22. So if you want to have more information, you can go there and read the details. But briefly, the database should store primarily what is required by the directive. That means the EPCs, the inspection reports, the renovation passports, and the smart readiness indicators, but also must be interconnected and interoperable with other administrative registers in the country, like the cadastral or land registers, or even the statistical databases. And at the same time, must disclose the information, notably to the owners, tenants, and other energy managers and other relevant stakeholders that are directly linked to that building. And also to disclose information, limited information, to other stakeholders that means even the wider public, to offer generic information about the building stock and the evolution of this performance of buildings based on the EPCs, for instance. At the same time, there are some categories of stakeholders that are allowed, are entitled by the directive to have more granular information. That means the statistical offices or even the public institution. Of course, everything packed and disclosed in terms of GDPR data protection. I would not insist more on the content or on the way we believe that database should be developed in order to have a forward-looking beginning and to be able to develop in the right way in the future. But probably I would have to say that nevertheless, once a year, according to the Article 22 of the directive, the aggregated information from these national databases must be transferred to the EU Building Stock Observatory. And speaking about this transfer to the EU Building Stock Observatory, we can see on the next slide what the implementing act defining common templates for the transfer provides. It's according to Article 22, and specifically it's an obligation according to the paragraph 6 of this article, the fact that the Commission had to adopt an implementing act by 30 of June 2025. That happened. And briefly about this implementing act, it defines the framework of this data transfer in the way that defines the date of the first transfer. That should be by 15 March 2027, and every year after, at least once a year. Why this date? Maybe it's worth mentioning. If this is a date that we agreed with the member states and also internally, that on one hand, it's fair in terms of having a good partial data set from the previous year, because the transposition deadline of the directive it's at the end of May 2026, 29th of May. So the member states should have sufficient time to store in their database some information and to transfer to the UBSO. At the same time, it is a certain coherence with the date deadline for reporting through the national energy and climate plans. So that's the reason of the date. The data to be transferred to the EU Building Stock Observatory must be aggregated at the national level and obviously will be GDPR proofed. Aggregated at national level, some colleagues may be unsatisfied about that, but the Commission is empowered by the directive to issue implementing acts. So this is more implementing acts. So this is only the first, setting the first condition to transfer the information, and at the same time acknowledging that any start it's not easy. So aggregated data at national level, it's a fair beginning, and in time it's possible, seeing how the things will evolve and how the process will evolve, we can go to more disaggregate information through other consequent implementing acts. In the implementing act, there are certain tables, about 23 tables, if I'm not wrong, addressing all the EPBD instruments I mentioned in the previous slides. So you can see on the right side, it's about very few information about the building stock, and also more information, more detailed information about the EPCs. That means the number of EPCs issued in the previous year, but at the same time also some information from these EPCs. That means notably the compulsory information mentioned in the Annex 5 of the directive, and a few other necessary accompanying data. The information about inspection reports, renovation passports, and the smart readiness indicators are quite limited. The required information to be transferred are quite limited, basically at the number of the inspection reports, renovation passports, and SRI issued in the previous year, and few information about each of them. I will not insist on that. You can go, this is just a teaser, we don't have time. You can go and see in the implementing act the details of the information to be transferred. How this transfer will be done, the Commission is working, as it mentioned in the implementing act, to prepare a channel to transfer this information through the currently existing e-platform that was created under the governance, Energy Union governance regulation, and will be a dedicated channel for this transfer to the UBSO. And on the member state side, it will be possible to have different options to fill up the data, the information. That means starting from the basic manual filling in web forms or in files, to a more evolved option of downloading the file from this transform, adapting and connecting to the national database, and after taking that file, after being filled automatically with data stored there, take the file, uploading in the platform and send it to us. It's not machine-to-machine connection, it's just the beginning, but at the same time, there are a lot of security requirements, and in order to overcome them for a machine-to-machine connection, we decided that this is the best smooth way to begin the transfer. Next slide, please. And the next slide, I think, is the last slide. No, it's the second last slide of my presentation. This is a summary of the main events on the EPBD timeline. I will not look on the past. I already mentioned that last year the directive was adopted and published. There are on the bottom side in the light blue colors the upcoming events, upcoming deadlines for the building renovation passport. But on the top, we can see the last box on the top on the right side is the deadline for the EU BSO, and probably this will be the first big event after the transposition deadline. And now moving to the last slide I prepared for today. A few words about EU Building Stock Observatory. It was established in 2016 and as part of Clean Energy for All European package. It had an update in 2019 in that format existing at the time. And since end of 2022, beginning of 2023, together with our colleagues from the CINEA contract and our colleagues from DigiDigit, we started a big revamp action, and we arrived to the BSO as it's, you can see it now online on our website. It's not optimal, it's not perfect, it's far from being that. It's just one small step forward we made. But due to the power given by the EPBD that strengthened the role of Building Stock Observatory in the policy, in the EU policy, I will not repeat the two articles, the first article mentioning that some information will start to be stored here in a more structured way, but I will just note the article from the bottom. It's Article 3, paragraph 9, asking the Commission specifically to also monitor annually the evolution of the energy performance of buildings based on the information available through the EU Building Stock Observatory. So EU Building Stock Observatory must emerge into a real EU data hub in time. And on top of the information we will receive from the transfer from the National Energy Performance of Buildings databases, of course, we will consider additional information from other sources where the member states already reported, like Eurostat, EEA. We will also try to take on board the member states' reports to the Commission through other policy lines. I already mentioned the National Energy and Climate Plans, and there are some sections related to buildings, but also other trustable sources with data that are renewed periodically and may be useful for identifying the structure and the performance of the EU building stock. I think that's it on my side. I would like to thank you very much and to follow the next presentations because are more interesting than mine, specifically the member states' experiences that are really thrilling, and I am looking forward to see them. And whenever it will be the case, myself and my colleague Marco Morini here, we are available for any potential question you will have, and we will do our best to reply to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bogdan, for this very insightful overview that you've done for, in the meantime, almost 240 participants, which is great. I look forward to the panel discussion where you'll be able to provide even more detailed insights. And your words with the small steps reminded me too a little bit like Neil Armstrong landing on the moon on the BSO, which is a very nice segue to me handing over to myself now, providing some highlights from the Building Stock Observatory. And
then the advantage of all guys, remember that moment, yeah.
So then let's move on. I have another nice quote from Baron Kelvin, also reminding us to the power of better data and why we need better data. Just switch on, move on, please. Exactly, because he said it in very elegant words. When you can measure what you are speaking about and express it in numbers, you know something about it. And when you cannot express it in numbers, your knowledge is of meager and unsatisfactory kind. So today we would just say you cannot manage what you cannot measure, but this is certainly a little bit more elegant and reminds us to the power and relevance of data, which I also would like to highlight on the next slide. which reminds us that this is not just an aim in itself to have better data, but it's really about empowering every euro to the maximum with the right data. So why do we need this data? Better data for better buildings will sustain and improve our well-being, first of all, because we live and work in buildings. It will make the EU and its member states competitive, more resilient and independent. It will help us really understand the role buildings must play in the energy system transformation. And it will also help us make actually buildings play that role within the limits we have with societal acceptability, the economic feasibility, and the environment. And the regulatory impact that was already mentioned by Bogdan gives us a triple boost that we will see on the next slides. For the Building Stock Observatory, first of all, it's the national databases, which Bogdan has already presented in detail. Each member state has to transfer the national database data to the Building Stock Observatory. But we also have, of course, the national building renovation plans, where the Commission is to use the EU Building Stock Observatory to report about the progress on the energy performance in the European building stock by means of the Building Stock Observatory. And then we also have an article in the Energy Efficiency Directive on public buildings, where the publicly available and accessible data about building stock characteristics, buildings, renovation, and energy performance of the public buildings may be aggregated as well by the EU Building Stock Observatory. So you can see the central role the Building Stock Observatory is getting in the future, even more than today, which is also summarized on the next visualization, where you can see that we have a big data puzzle. Could you move on with the slide, please? Then exactly, we can see the three main pillars that I just mentioned, a little bit more visualized and with the individual elements, which I'm not going through now in detail, but it's really the database, the blue part, the national building renovation plans, the green part, and the inventory of public buildings from the Energy Efficiency Directive, which is meant to empower buildings data and really uniting them in one tool. So what is the BSO today? I would like to show you some facts. It's a web platform, as Bogdan already mentioned. It's open to all stakeholders, not just member states, but also industry, NGOs, and research can view all the data that are collected there today and will be collected there in the future. It's facilitating the better energy performance and climate neutrality of EU's building stock. It's supporting the whole policy cycle, what Bogdan has shown very nicely in his first slide. And it's already today and even more in the future, the central hub on the European building stock. So when we would like to know what the BSO is today, I think it's good that we thought when designing the current version of the BSO that we have mainly three types of users. One is the user who's just interested in quick facts. Then we have a use case number 2. That's, let's say, more the people who like to play with data a little bit. And then last but not least, we have a third use case, which we called the data nerds. So the persons who really want to know everything, would like to scroll into, to dive into the data in the most available detail themselves and play with it. And I would like to briefly show you these three elements, or at least two of them, with a live demo of the BSO. So it's not just a theoretical construct I'm talking about here, but it's actually live. And I will share my screen so you can see it, how it looks like, just in case you haven't been doing it yourself so far. So I hope my screen is visible. Yes, it looks good. So when you go to the website of the EU Building Stock Observatory, it's very easy. Just type in whatever search machine, EU Building Stock Observatory. It will lead you to this webpage here. You see that we have mainly three parts. It's the BSO fact sheets, that's for the quick user. We have the BSO database, that's to play with, the use case number 2. And last but not least, if you like, the data nerd can also download the whole data set and play with the data him or herself. But please note, read the README first tab first, because otherwise it will get tricky. So then we have the fact sheets. They look like this. They are dynamic. So once the database is updated, these fact sheets always show the latest information that we have from the latest available year. And it means it updates dynamically and automatically. We always have a full screen view. You can also print this as a one-pager, and you have the possibility to select between EU 27 and each of the EU 27 member states to have a look at the data on the fact sheet, which together with the Commission, we thought is what probably most of the readers would like to know first. Last but not least, we have what we call the database. This is, again, available in full screen mode. This is just an example of how the data is represented. We have different views and different subjects you can scroll into here. For example, as we have the final energy consumption split by energy carrier. You can switch also to have a view to see it by energy use. And yeah, of course, you have, again, the selection for EU 27 and for all the member states individually. I really cordially invite you, play with it. It's really fun already today, and it will be even more fun in the future. So let's stop this short demo and move on with the presentation, please, Andre. Where I would like to show what the BSO is gonna be tomorrow, because as Bogdan explained, it will be the hub where member states will feed in the data from their databases, and also the Commission will use it to feature the data from the national building renovation plans. And on top of we have today, this is just a selection to give you an idea. We will also see data from heating and cooling systems, a little bit more details on renovation and planning. And of course, last but not least, because it's also about a just transition and underpinning that with data, about social aspects and vulnerability. When we move on, we can see that we've already had quite an evolution of data. We started in 2023 with a database that contained approximately 7,000 data points. Today it's 65,000. And I think we can look into a very bright future when all the member states feed their data into the BSO. We may have a factor 10 compared to today, even in the future, I assume. Yes, so I hope it got clear that the BSO is really meant to be your tool. So try to feed it as much as possible with the best possible data in the future. In our team, we already have included the concerted action EPBD, and we also collaborate with the concerted action EED. So a good starting point for what we have. I really invite you to keep it going. You see the QR code on the next slide to get access to the invitations to our webinars. You can also send an email to my colleague Larissa, who also co-prepared this webinar. And on the last slide, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. Contact me if you have any questions. You can also scan this QR code to have the direct access to the website, and have fun playing with it. Let's make it better to the best of our building stock in Europe. And now I would like to hand over to our next speaker, Dimitris Athanasiou, senior expert at IEECP and the coordinator of the Observe project. Dimitris will tell us about Observe strategic support and national rollout. Dimitris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andreas, and good morning to all the 250 people listening to us live right now. My name is Dimitris Athanasiou, and I'm a senior energy expert at the Institute of European Energy and Climate Policies. It is great honor for me to be here in this webinar today, representing as a coordinator the Observe project. I have to say that when we applied for the project, the EPBD was still under negotiation, but we already had a good overview of the various issues associated with the building-related data. And we can all agree that the EPBD recast really created the framework for better data, not to mention the significant improvements that will bring for the EU Building Stock Observatory. However, we need to see, in my opinion, how the EPBD will be implemented in practice. And do not get me wrong, but based on my previous experience in the Ministry of Energy in Greece, I can only say that it will be challenging for national authorities. That is exactly what we had in mind with Observe. We had in mind Observe was designed exactly to support member states with all the different data collection and reporting requirements. And we try actually to address this need for a systemic method of gathering and aggregating quality data by developing innovative data collection methods and strategies. The overall objective, as I said, is to assist national authorities to optimize their data collection methods, streamline the coordination of all relevant bodies necessary for it, and enhance synergies and interaction between member states and stakeholders with the EU Building Stock Observatory. But allow me to clarify from the beginning that we do not want to replace member states, and our only effort is to assist them. So we will not develop a data platform, and we will not transfer the data to the EUB. So I will explain. Allow me to briefly present what we plan to do in the next slide. So the idea, first of all, is to start with a thorough assessment of the policy and data needs in the targeted member states. We will target 6 member states at the beginning, but the plan is to also follow up with and replicate the process and the methodology in more member states. So we want to see what the data requirements are stemming from the EPBD, the building innovation plans, the national energy and climate plans reporting, the EED, the renewable energy directive, but also we want to see what the policy needs of each and every member state that we support is. So the idea here is to identify gaps and overlaps in current national building data and try to streamline the process. We then want to map existing tools and data sources and create, let's say, an inventory of all current national databases, including EPCs, renovation passports, SRIs, whatever we can find in each and every member state. And the idea is to actually evaluate the data quality, interoperability, and governance of each different system and benchmark against best practices from other member states and relevant EU projects. Then we will define, as I will explain later, the functionalities and the data collection process and governance, aiming to design an Observe prototypal national building stock observatory with the assistance, let's say, of and feedback from stakeholders through national data dialogue panels. And the idea finally is to replicate the whole process, implement it, communicate it. But let me briefly explain what we intend to do. So first of all, as you can see in the next slide, when we talk about data needs and data gaps, it's not what we might have in mind in the beginning. So it's not about just finding the gaps, the data we have, and see what is missing. The idea here is to actually compose a gap analysis, a thorough gap analysis, where we can actually have a SWOT analysis and data collection process together. Just because we have some data doesn't necessarily mean that we can actually use it. This is important to understand that it's not going to give us the full picture of the missing data. More information is needed to complement this exercise. For example, the availability, reliability of the source, accessibility, format, and so on. In order to understand the quality, reliability, and usability of each and every data, it is important also to conduct a SWOT analysis based and supported by a scoring system. So overall, with all this process, with all this exercise, the output is to prepare a comprehensive list of indicators complemented with our evaluation criteria. So having done this, the next step, as we can see in the next slide, is to actually translate all this analysis, all the gap analysis, into a technical and operational framework by designing and developing an archetype for what we're going to call National Building Stock Observatories. The list we already prepared in the previous phase is huge. I have to say, because it reflects all the relevant indicators of the EPBD, the building renovation plans, and the associated Annex 2 of the EPBD recast, the EED requirements, the renewable requirements, and ACP reporting, together with the EU Building Stock Observatory and other national policy needs we identified through interviews with member states. So we have a big list of indicators, and we also try to evaluate it, but we cannot actually work with all this with this big list. And the idea actually now is to define the scope and functionalities of the national building stock observatories tailored to the national needs, and select maybe the key indicators and data sources that will also be important to feed the EU BSO. So we decided, and this is still under, let's say, preparation, to start with the requirements under the implementing regulation, since we have this implementing regulation now. And at a later stage, we will enrich this data set with additional parameters and additional, let's say, data sets coming from, different legislation, and also from the needs of each and every member state. So the idea here is actually to have a data set which would allow data to be transmitted in a standardized and reliable way. So in the next slide, you can see that what we want to do is actually follow up with some specific national data dialogue panels, which is important for us, because we really want to understand what the needs are, or the policy needs for each and every member state. Then we want to implement it, to test it, and to refine it, and ensure that everything is fit for purpose. And we want, as I said, to replicate it to other member states. And the final outcome, of course, will be to develop and deliver national policy briefs based on what we learned already, and see if we can actually apply it in a pan-European method. In the next slide, what we want to actually deliver with Observe is not just a database, but an intermediate structure. We want to ensure that everybody can contribute to this data set, with of course specific, let's say, accreditation systems, and that would also allow member states to have a first level of quality control of the national data before we transfer to the EU. So we want to create a system that would ensure modularity and flexibility while maintaining the data governance robust. So the idea behind it is to offer also additional functionalities like reporting, monitoring dashboards, data query and analysis tools. So really create the framework for a policy analysis tool and statistical analysis tool. So yes, as I said, it is important for us, as you can see, to ensure that everybody is on board on this. So we want support from member states, from national authorities, but also relevant stakeholders to participate in interviews, in-person technical workshops, dialogue meetings, mutual learning workshops, and so on. Because exactly as I said, the idea is to identify the challenges in each and every member state. We also want to make sure that we have feedback and test and refine the methodology and the archetype, but also, facilitate all the change we were gonna learn through this process. We have already started with interviews and in all 6 member states that we support, and it is, let's say, important to see that there is great interest from national authorities for the project, because they understand that it is a huge challenge to collect the data in, let's say, in a consistent way. So we really hope that, step by step, we will manage to build a tool that will be useful for member states and national authorities. So yes, I think that would be all from my side. We remain available, as I said, for everybody, stakeholders, and we will follow up with a set of events that we will invite everybody. So thank you all, and I'm happy to take any questions later in the panel.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Dimitris, for introducing us to the Observe project. We continue with our next speaker, Rui Fragoso, Head of Building and Efficiency of Resources at Aden in Portugal. And with this, we kick off our round of good practice examples of already existing buildings databases across the EU. Rui will introduce you to Portugal's national database. And Rui, and also all the next speakers, as we are lagging behind by 12 minutes, I really ask you to stick to the 10 minutes, and I will just signal the remaining time with my fingers. So when you look a little bit to the side, you will see it. Rui, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Andreas, and thank you for the invitation to be here, showing a little what we are doing actually with the EPC data at the national level. I have a few slides. I'll try to go very briefly through them. Nevertheless, I believe the presentations will be available and you can go into detail later on. So, starting over the next slides, I will go through a little context, as you can see. Next slide, please. In the content, so I'll go through a little context of the Portuguese building stock, how we have also been setting up the EPC databases, how we are using data, and future developments we are expected for the EPBD 2024. Just a little context, as you can see, in most European countries, we have a whole stock in Portugal. Most of them was constructed many years ago. They are mostly based on single-family houses, and as you can see, the energy efficiency performance of them is a little lower as we would like to have them at the moment, especially on the residential buildings. On the next slide, you can see that part of that was also due to the fact that legislation only came into force actually when we started implementing the EPBD, and we have been improving a lot since 2002. Nowadays, the EPC scheme is fully embedded in many areas, and we have a good pace of issuing EPCs with more than 500 EPCs being issued every day. Well, on the next slide, you can see also that one of the important facts that we have implemented under these 5 steps, and specifically on the last one, was the need to upload the data before issuing the EPC, allowing that when the EPC is actually available online, all the data was previously stored. And that is the reason why we have, since the very beginning, 2007, a lot of data related to the EPC schemes. On the next slide, you will see a few numbers where we stand. So we have more than 2.5 million EPCs issued, a good number of them for residential. Nevertheless, a lot of public buildings and non-residential here implemented. A lot of information from improvement measures, but mostly a lot of data, more than 600 million entries, according to different types of data that we are being collected for geographic information, building information, technical building systems, as such. On the next slide, you will see a brief summary and a brief summary of where we are using this data. We are actually using this data to support policy making, to incentivize renovations, or to support stakeholders. I will go briefly through some of these actions, and I will start on the next slide with the one related to monitoring long-term renovation policies. So we have been using this data not only to set up the long-term renovation strategies with information to characterize the buildings, but also to set it up scenarios coming from the recommendations. But also on the next animation, you will see that we have been using also that data to monitor the long-term renovation strategy in terms of renovated area, renovated buildings, discomfort, and other indicators, number of nearly zero energy buildings and such. On the next slide, we will go to the financial needs. It has been also important to use this information to evaluate what are the needs in terms of financial investment to renovate our buildings. You can see that mostly the envelope, both walls and windows, take a large chunk. More than 5,000 million euros is needed by the EPCs that have been issued. You can see that most of the residential are based on the measures that address the envelope. When you go for non-residential, it's actually the technical building systems that need to be worked, and it has been used to allow us to better design financial schemes throughout the years. On the next slides, we will enter also on taxation and benefits. We have been using these EPC data to allow for municipalities to make reductions in terms of municipality taxation in case you do some renovations or in case you are already an A+. And on the next animation, you will see that we are being using it also for renovations. In case you buy a house and you do some renovations, you are allowed to get some money from transaction fees and such. On the next slide, there's an example on how we are using that information on financial schemes. This is an example of a financial scheme of 1.4 billion euros. And basically, I won't go too much into the detail, but what you can see here, that information is stored in the EPC database about current performance, measures, investments, and such. And banks can access that information just by using the EPC number in order to be comfortable on what kind of measures, how much investment and such is needed. And that is being used also to provide lower interest rates for measures that address recommendations on EPCs. On the next slide, you will see that EPCs are also, also to see that we are using it also for recovery and resilience plans, not only to have EPCs showing how the buildings were before and after the measures have been implemented, but also to use statistical data to provide some average savings in case you have very single and simple measures, programs that just address simple measures where sometimes it's not needed to have an EPC and just average savings is enough to monitor that program. So I was saying in the next slide, you will see that we are being using also the EPC to impact transaction prices. We have been able to share this data with the companies that studied this topic, and we have seen quite good relation between people that are more willing to spend more money in buildings that actually have a better label compared to other buildings. On the next slide, you will see an example on how we are using the EPC database to support a one-stop shop. We have a one-stop shop called Portal Casa Mais, and basically when people go online to their specific house, they get access to data that also comes from the EPC. Everything you see here in green comes from the EPC, and that allows people to know better in a very digitalized way what they have, what they can do, and then later on contact companies, auditors, and other service suppliers. On the next slide, you will see how EPC is also being used to support real estate agencies. So it's mandatory for them to show the EPC label on advertisements, but we also provide a web service that allows them to access that information. It has been accessed more than 800,000 times over the last 3 years, and they get some information that it's valid information, so that they know that they are showing the exact data about that specific building, and that has also had an impact on the compliance level from these entities. A study from 2019 showed that only 4% of ads didn't display the EPC label, which I found quite impressive at that moment, which showed quite a high level of compliance. On the next slide, coming close to the end, you will see that the EPC data is also being used to support the EU taxonomy in terms of better reporting to banks. I won't go into much detail about this slide that addresses taxonomy that most of you might know, but you will see on the next slide that we developed a web service dedicated to the Portuguese Association Bank since 2024, February, and the idea is actually to allow banks for their portfolio to access through a web service, information that you can see on the lower left side, the data that they can access, and using that information to better characterize their portfolio. Over 1 year with 14 banks, we had more than 1 million accesses, which shows that banks are really interested in getting access to this information. On the next slide, just a brief overview of what we are expecting to do. So basically, we are trying to improve the way we identify buildings. This has been quite a key issue. We don't have a centralized national database for all buildings, so we try to work with the identifiers that most entities have and try to combine them so that we know that we are always talking about the same building. On the next slide, you will see that we are also going through an EPC-centric database to a database more related to kind of a digital logbook where we will have the EPC, but renovation passports, SRI, inspection reports, and such. And these will be much more comfortable to manage. And also on the next slide, you will see that we are also improving the layers of the database on not only how we manage that information, how we structure that information, but how we use it to report and also to interoperate with the entities we have on the right side. And of course, the EU Building Stock Observatory will be one of them. We will try also to improve as much as we can the links with the EU BSO. For the final slide, I just leave a few remarks just to say that although it was not mandatory, it was good to know that in Portugal and many other countries, they decided to have an EPC database, and that has been a great tool to support policies. It was important also to develop the right legal framework in order to use and access and manage that database, to identify which data should be collected and its purpose. GDPR is still an issue, not only in Portugal, but I see everywhere. It's sometimes not fully clear on the limits that we can use some of these data and what qualifies to personal or not personal data. And finally, it was also relevant to not only involve the right stakeholders, but to establish the protocols so that we can access the data from other entities, and also to have the right human resources managing and using this database, which it's quite intensive. And that is all from my side. Hope I stick within the 10 minutes, and I'll be very happy to answer some questions later on if it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rui, for this fascinating tour through what you've already achieved in Portugal. I'm sure many can learn a lot from you, and we'll certainly hear more in the panel discussion. Now we move from Portugal to La France. Antoine Breitwieler, Senior Data Analyst at CSTB, will inform us about the French National Database. Antoine, the floor is yours, and also please stick to the 10 minutes.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. So I'm Antoine Radvillers from CSTV, the French Scientific and Technical Building Center in France, and I will present you the French National Building Database. So next slide, please. So what is the French National Building Database? So it's a database we built at in open data at the building level, which is important. It's not a statistical database. It's available at the building level, and it's available for both public and private stakeholders to use. It's a compilation of all publicly available building-related data in France, including many data like energy, administrative, and technical information. It's a solid foundation for the future EPBD national database. It's not the official one. We don't have, it's not decided yet, but we have many of the input required for the Article 22 of EPBD as input in this database. And also, it was not designed at the time it was created to support EPBD. So it has many other purposes. It was designed for other purposes. So it supports a wide range of use cases like building resilience to heat wave, vulnerability assessment for natural hazards, urban densification, biodiversity, and much more. And it's developed by CSTV. So on the next slide, we'll see how it has been built. So this database was built by gathering all the information we have on building on many building database that exist in France. So here just a few of them, and what we learned when we did that process of gathering all this building data in France is that we have find like three database that are the core structure of the BDNB, which is first and foremost the address national database that allows to connect all the other information to the database. And that's a key element because most of the building data in France are use address as a geolocation right now. So it was a key part of the database. We have the structure, the 3D building geometry to be able to represent the building on a map is very key. And also the third one, which is maybe the most important one, is the fiscal administration database that allows us to know the function and how many housing, how many offices are in each building. So to know better what is the purpose of the building. And with all this core data, we were able to connect all the other databases. And what made us able to do this building database is you see the little open data pictogram is that we have in around 2020 a lot of databases available at the building level which were put in open data in France, especially the energy performance certificate, which was a real game changer in that aspect. And that allowed us to build this database. So the open data of many databases was key to the success of this initiative. And one final thing on that slide is that we are currently trying to replace address geolocation in many building database with proper building identification, which is a new initiative in France and will replace at some point the address geolocation of buildings. So in the next slide, so we've gathered all this data into a single database. So to make sure that stakeholders don't waste time anymore to gather all this data because it was very time consuming for many people to do. But when we did that, we still have missing data. For example, EPCs in France, about 25% of individual housings. So what we did on top of that database is that we use machine learning algorithm, or AI now you call it, to predict missing values. So with 25%, for example, of individual housing, you have plenty of data, enough data to have accurate models that can predict the rest of the building stock. And on top of that prediction, we were able to calculate many KPI we use to support public policies. So in the next slide, we can show some example of those estimated indicators. So we are able to estimate EPD on all the residential building stock, heat wave vulnerability, urban heat island, and so on. So in the next slide, I will just show you a quick example of this support of public policies with a very simple example. So we have this estimated EPD that allows us to know to estimate the performance of each residential building in France, and we use that modelization to be able to calculate in the next slide some key indicators on renovation, and we estimated that if we heavily renovate only 20% of housings in France, we could attain 50% of the total potential of CO2 emission reduction. And so what is the strength of this database is that you can put together this kind of analysis, but also in the next slide, you can target very specific buildings that are in the 20%. You have to button in action. Sorry. So you can identify which are the specific buildings that will be in the 20% of this target policy. So that was a quick overview of the BNB, and thank you for your attention. And I have put my contact and the link for the BDNB documentation, but it's not available in English, sorry, only in French.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Antoine, for providing us with this impressive example, how you really manage the complexity of all the data sources, bringing them all together. And I'm sure that we will also hear quite some questions in the panel discussion on how you actually managed to do that, because everyone who's tried so before knows what effort is behind that, I think. So now let's move on. With our final example, we move to Spain. Daniel Jimenez, senior expert at IETCC, will guide us through a concrete example of a data system in Spain. Daniel, the floor is yours. And again, please stick to the 10 minutes. Can you hear me, Daniel? André, can you help? Any information about Daniel?
Yeah, he is connected. I'm trying to see if I can be supportive. Just wait 10 seconds to see.
Okay. No worries.
Sorry.
So everybody can take a deep breath after all this information we've already received during this webinar. Already think a little bit about the questions you would have on the previous presentations, and especially also on the country examples, which I personally think are really super impressive what the colleagues have achieved in these countries. And I'm sure there are also other good examples from other countries which we may present in an upcoming webinar that we again might do together with these two projects, EU BSO and Observe, which so far is actually a great pleasure to do. And especially seeing that we have still 240 participants. So Daniel, I can see you. Can you also hear me? Okay,
Yes, I can
great.
hear you. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Yes, great.
Okay.
It works fine. So please, the floor is yours, Daniel.
Okay, and so now we have only 7 minutes, maybe. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Jimenez. I am part of the construction unit quality at the Eduardo Torja Institute for Construction Science. Our unit is participating as a partner in the Observe project. And first of all, I would like to thank Andrew Vladimir from EPCB Center for this kind invitation to take part in this event. I will cover very briefly, 2 points that will be, I hope, the interest of everyone. First of the tools, the action we are undertaking to support the Ministry of Housing and Urban Agenda to develop the National Building Renovation Plan. And second one will be the lessons we learned from the data collection based on the energy performance certificates, the EPCs. As you know, the main goal of the EPB is to decarbonize the entire building stock across the European Union by 2050. This is a very ambitious goal, and there are many challenges that are already being discussed. But I want to emphasize one crucial point is that we need to focus on the existing building stock, especially those built before the strong emission requirements were introduced that will be in Spain roughly around 2050. To give you an idea of the scale, there are around 18.5 million main units. And this leads us to 2 fundamental questions. First one will be how can we effectively understand and characterize the building stock? And the second, how can we estimate the impact of policies on it? To address this question, our unit has developed a digital twin. It's a behavioral model that mirrors statistical characteristics of the building sector. The model is called Modesto and consists approximately of 660,000 simulations that combine residential and non-residential buildings across 15 climate zones, 6 building uses, 7 construction periods, and 187 combination of technical systems and energy vectors. The model is based on a bottom-up approach because it incorporates the geometry of all buildings for the 5 cadastral systems that currently operate in Spain. This was made possible thanks to the compliance with the Inspire directive, which stands as an excellent example of structured data interoperability. The model also integrates data from surveys conducted by the Spanish National Statistics Institute, and this allows us to incorporate technical information such as the prevalence of HVAC systems and the frequency of renovation interventions, as well as socioeconomic data, for example, the average household income in a given area. To estimate the energy demand, next slide, please. Thank you. To estimate the energy demand, the selection of the downloaded cadastral data is modeled and simulated under OpenStudio under the condition defined by the Spanish Revolution. To do this, support these projects, the necessary measures have been developed and are openly shared through a GitHub repository. So anyone can simulate the model under the condition of the Spanish regulation. The Modesto model is scaled using consumption values from Eurostat. So that gives the model a top-down adjustment complementing its bottom-up structure. In the next slide, we can see like a few examples of that the model enables a detailed analysis of the building stock and helps assess how the various requirements of the EPBD translated into practice. It allows for an estimation of the potential impact of one specific policy's intervention on the building stock, and also it supports aggregation of data by territorial area, building use, climate zone, and more. Having discussed, I think is the previous slide, or one is missed. No, excuse me. Okay, yes. Having discussed the model that enables us to analyze the building stock and estimate the impact of proposed intervention, I would like to shift to another more practical level, focusing on the case of data collection through the EPCs. The EPCs should serve as the key tool for monitoring the evolution of the building stock, and it is the primary channel through which property owners can declare the characteristics of their buildings. Is therefore essential to optimize the operation of EPCs and similar instruments in order to keep the model up to date. When the EPC was first introduced in the Spain regulation, certificates were generated directly by the calculation software in PDF format. Although the content of each field was described, there was no defined data structure or semantics rules. Additionally, no validation mechanisms were implemented. This made automated data processing extremely challenging, and it required a large number of syntactic rules to correctly interpret the content. Moreover, the lack of data validation meant that significant effort was needed to clean and normalize the data before it could be processed further. Around 2014, an additional file was introduced as a part of the EPC. This is an XML file with a structure specifically designed for automated processing. There is an example, but we will just comment some of the properties. That this file is a structure. The structure is designed to support automated data processing. The data is organized hierarchically for better structure and interpretation. The format data follows open standards. That is quite important. Fields can be defined as mandatory or optional, and this format support versioning for future updates, which is also something very important. Also, the use of a validation schema ensures that this file contains data consistency. This is an example of the code for validation, but I think we can skip this one because we are a few short of time. But what happened that when we introduced this file, is a small ecosystem has emerged around this type of data with tools and functions that are now make much more easy to perform tasks that were previously complex. So it is possible to have interoperability between the certification tools. Now, a single application generated PDF certificates from the XML. We have the same format across all tools. We have an online validation platform available, so anyone can check if his file is valid or not. We can deliver indicators calculation directly from this data. We can batch processing capabilities and so on. And in this context, to make a national database could be just collecting XML files from the regional registers. In the next slide, I have one example of a tool that can use to validate your XML file, but we can skip this one also because we don't have much time. The lesson we learned during this process is that ensuring data quality at the beginning of the process is essential. This is where the validation system must be implemented. It's equally important to provide applications that make data entry extremely simple for the technicians. At that point, I would like to highlight that some public administration, while rightly focused on preventing fraud, have designed processes that are overly complex. And this can discourage well-intentioned users or force them to hire costly consulting services. The system must remain simple to encourage honest participation. Also, we learned that we have to use open standards for data formats to integrate validation mechanisms directly into the data generation tools, the same systems with the capability to evolve over time, and build systems optimized for automatic processing. As a finally idea, they will, in the next slide, we can just comment that the integration on a streamlined approach among the EPBD policy instruments will represent added value to the overall design of energy policy. It would be desirable to establish a common and interoperable data schema across the various instruments like the EPEC, the Radiation Passport, Smart Business Indicators, and even enable connect with the national system like the building logbook we have in Spain. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your time and interest.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for talking us through the actions you've taken and the lessons learned. And while this is the end of the round of presentations, it's obviously not the end of our webinar. Thank you very much to all the presenters so far. And now let's dive into the panel discussion. It will be moderated by Rémi Colombet, Head of Policy and Efficient Buildings Europe. And Rémi, have fun. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Rémi. I'm the head of policy at Efficient Buildings Europe. We're the European Association representing producers, manufacturers of energy efficiency products and equipment for buildings. I'm really happy to join this webinar. Thanks to all the presenters for very interesting presentations, and we have already quite a few questions in the chat. And maybe I'll start with the first one on comparability. And there, maybe the question is more for Bogdan and for you, Andreas, to some extent. How do you ensure a balance between flexibility for member states and comparability in general, but also year on year, if methodologies are changing a bit, how is it possible to, with this yearly upload of data, to have a sort of clear picture?
Okay, who's first?
You, of course, Bogdan.
Thank you so much. I already replied to Johan in the chat. It is a very, very good question, as usual, from his side. In principle, and not in principle, we are speaking now about having a systematic data collection, the information already produced through the instruments created by EPBD. And although the comparability is critical and very important, it's in another yard, let's say, not related to Article 22 of EPBD. This is, I think, a long debate, and Johan knows better than me, about unifying the methodological calculation of the energy performance across the member states. Obviously, it's not so easy to do it. From obvious reasons I don't want to mention, but I think everyone can guess, and probably also practical reasons. And probably the single way to improve the comparability is to have an additional assessment report study based on data collected through the EPBD, knowing very well the methodological approach in the member states, and trying to translate, to have like a Google translator, EPB translator, and try to arrive at the best comparable point possible. I don't think it's so easy because there are too many variables and it's quite challenging to arrive to some meaningful figures if we don't harmonize at the basis, the methodology. That's it.
But maybe briefly to add, I think with the latest EPBD, we have made a big step ahead with the templates for the data collection, which is something that was also mentioned in the last presentation, that there is, first of all, really now a uniform format for collecting the data, which is a big step ahead, I think, and which definitely helps comparability, because so far we typically had data that were structured completely differently, and then it was another step to even make the structure comparable and uniform, apart from how the data have been determined. And I think we are definitely moving into the right direction. And yeah, let's also see what AI will potentially bring us to make this stuff more easily, more comparable than what we have been accustomed to during the past few decades, where it actually was really difficult.
Well, you know, even AI can hallucinate, and be careful using AI for figures. We had some issues here.
Of course.
But just to complement what you said, I would dare to say that the biggest achievement of this article in EPBD is not necessarily the transfer of information to the BSO, but the fact that all the member states will start store and collect systematically this information, that it's already available, but not everywhere used as such. And I think this is the biggest support EPBD offered to the member states, to put some order in the processes and to be able to use the information they already have, but not everyone knows about.
Yeah, that's true. But even to make a joke, in some of the data that we see today, I feel I have a hallucination, and so it wouldn't make a big difference from that point of view.
Step by step.
Thanks a lot. I think that's really a key point. That's really interesting. Obviously, so we heard about quite advanced players in this field today. Do we have a sense of the situation in other member states? Where do these thoughts? And then next to that, two sort of questions. First, what is the EU observed the BSO providing in terms of support for the ones that are like maybe a bit behind in terms of the implementation of those provisions, and for the ones that are already advanced on this, what recommendations can you make? What hurdles have you faced in developing your databases, and that the others could benefit from?
To whom is addressed the question?
So
and if you can summarize it, please.
Sure.
Please.
First, probably in terms of situation and level of support for you, Bogdan, Andras, and Dimitris, and then we'll go to Antoine and Daniel for sort of feedback experience.
So if I understood well, it is about the degree of development of these databases across the member states. Of course, it's a wide range. I would not say starting from nothing, but starting from a very, low level, let's say. For instance, not everywhere you have disclosed the information, aggregated information from the energy performance certificates. In some countries it's nothing, in others, but it's a very nice dashboard. You can go, you can see what's happening. In other countries, even more. You can access as building owner the information regarding your building. So it's a big discrepancy, and of course, I don't want to blame and shame, because this is not the reason of our webinar and the intention, it should be positive. So we should arrive to a certain minimum. And what the EU policy, at least in energy, is doing, it's to secure that affordable minimum, let's say. And this is what we intend to do. And in the future, once we will have a proper basis starting point everywhere, for sure we can evolve together. And I am sure that the member states authorities will be the first starting to like and enjoy having one-stop shop for all the information they may need to prepare an assessment to see if their policies had an impact or not. And also, last but not the least, to not be always so much overburdened by the reports to the Commission, you know. So I think Rui and Antoine and Daniel can say more how useful can be such a database in the policy support policy process. How easy? Okay, easy. Nothing is easy. But in terms of time consumed for preparing a report about the building stock in certain context, probably in some countries you spend weeks and have a lot of phone calls and consultants and begging different departments. In other countries, you go to the database, you do it with 1-2 experts, and in few hours, 2 days, you have a very nice report based on concrete figures. So not opinions and estimates or, I don't know, figures from 10 years ago.
Thanks. Do you want to complement that, Dimitris, in terms also of the support?
I fully agree with Bogdan. This is important. I had the chance to face it myself several times. And indeed, it will improve the situation, the data collection, the policy making, of course, not just in terms of not in terms of time. I think the most important is that member states will be and national authorities will be in a position to have better strategies. It's also about the reliability of the data and this. However, I'm a little bit, let's say, skeptical about the transition period. So it's not an easy process, in my opinion, even if there are many, many available data sources around. I'm not sure if and how all this can be used, unless we have, let's say, a systematic analysis, a consistent analysis of the data. So we need to make sure that, yes, we have this tool, we have this database, but can we use it? If we are to use it, we need to do it like this. All this is going to be very, very challenging. But I fully agree with you that it shouldn't be seen as a compliance burden. I mean, this process about the data collection, but I think it should be a strategic, let's say, imperative for national authorities to finally build a database, an observatory, whatever it needs, so that they can have reliable data for any use. But this is not an easy process to do. It's not even easy to transmit the data to the UBSO. This is what we try to do in Observe, and we already see the challenges ahead. That's why we try to see exactly, yes, we found out that there are many data sources, but we cannot use the data in a consistent way. That's why we need to define exactly, indicator by indicator, how we can use it. It's not going to be easy. It is challenging, but I fully agree and I fully support all this EPBD, let's say, new provisions. It can only make the data collection and data reliability and usability better.
If I may add a bit, I think the benefits of the databases, energy performance for building databases, are going beyond the information for preparing reports or assessment. For instance, for the energy performance certificate, you can embed the process of issuing the certificate and link it to the database, you will have automatically a quality control much better than when you collect the papers and so on. You can see immediately where are some strange figures. I know, a guy issuing 1,000 TPCs in a day. Or I don't know, an assessor that constantly it's doing wrong things or having complaints. So there are many benefits if we want to make things right. And I think this is a big opportunity for the member states to exploit it. Now we have the basis, the legal basis. So let's use it, I think. If we want to do good things, I cannot see a negative point in that.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think that makes sense. We heard also from Portugal the recently on the EPC, the system control that's been put in place is quite interesting and could be used in other member states. But then turning to the examples we heard from, what were the main hurdles when setting up those databases? How did you manage those, and what learnings can you share with the audience? Maybe starting with going to Antoine and then Daniel.
I thank you, Remy. Well, when we started at the very beginning, I must confess we were not very confident on the approach, and basically we started by, and I confess, requesting as much as data as possible, and still not knowing exactly on what to do with that data. But it has been a growing process and a learning process, and once we start having that data, then it allows us to start thinking on what to do with that data. With this data, perhaps we can now try to develop better financial schemes, improve statistics, and basically we connect every day with the national statistics to provide daily updated data. And it was a shot that was not clear at the moment, but that was the experience of having this data and this learning process. One of the key topics were also the links with, and I touched a little on that, with other stakeholders and entities that manage data and have responsibilities on part of the data that we interoperate, and sometimes data that we also collect, which is for them key data. So working with these other authorities, making the right protocols and establish the right web services, and making it a win-win situation for both entities was also very important to allow us to keep building on the data we are collecting.
Thanks a lot. Antoine?
So from our experience, so it's much more technical contribution, but what we experienced when we worked with ADEME, which is the French EPC database operator, is that what was key to have this database working was to make sure the geolocation of EPC was proper. So a proper geolocation for database, it's the basics, but if you don't have that, it's very difficult to build that kind of database. So the quality of geolocation, also the standardization of information, which was presented in the last presentation, but it's very important to have quality control checks, etc., because we had an EPC database up until 2020 that don't have this quality check, and we have seen the much more improvement we had with the new one, with many quality checks and so on. So it's not it takes time to build that, but then it makes the data more trustable. So it's a very good investment to have this kind of quality checks to make sure the EPC data are coherent within each other. So that's the key aspects. So geolocation, standardization, and also quality control of the data. And also one thing that was really a struggle for us is the legal landscape of all the building data, because it's very complicated today to have proper answer still on some data. they are available for some use cases or not. And if you want to build like a building database that gather many data from many public services, you have to have legal experts to build a proper use case application and make sure that everything is okay with the current legislation. And that's something that takes a lot of time and that can block, freeze the technical process of doing the database because you are waiting authorization to do stuff with data. So that's also a key element you have to manage.
Is this something linked to GDPR or also national legislation?
There is a GDPR, company secrets. There are many legal aspects. There are fiscal administration code, something like that. So there are a lot of text. Sometimes they contradict each other, and then you need a legal expert. And the chance we had in France is that we have a direction of numerical transition who had the legal aspect managed, and so they were also a little bit engaged into making as much as possible things in at the open data level, which help a lot because usually when in this kind of jurisdiction, you legal experts they will make things keep things protected by default. And with this administration, they have the inverse logic to try to make as much thing as open data as possible. And it changed a lot of things to have this administration looking to the data and say, okay, this should be in open data, etc., etc. And they contribute a lot to making a lot of data sets we use today at open data level, which is the perfect level of legal because you can do anything basically with open data. So that's the feedback here.
Thanks a lot. That's really useful. Daniel, do you want to share your experience?
Well, yeah, so I'll say just a few things because I think I cover somehow this point of my presentation. I have to say that the growing curve of this is very good. So at the beginning, it seems to be slow because you have to make a lot of effort dealing with all this kind of data, but the production increased rapidly. So you get the really good benefits in the midterm. So I would like to aim the people to get this path to do the effort needs at the beginning, so they can join these things. And also, is for us has been very a key point to develop useful applications. So if you take the road to make a useful application for others, people will join. And this has been crucial, helping the local governments because they have maybe less resources. So if you share with them useful application, they will join. Otherwise than building very difficult structures and that can be easily used. So this is very important for EPC also to make them useful for the people and for the system. And in that way, I will say that you must keep the system easy, as much easy as possible. Of course, you need to take some data and indicators, but you have to keep the system easy so almost everyone can use it. Of course, not everything, but maybe smart readiness indicators is It's an indicator that is quite difficult, and you need professionals to fulfill these indicators. But in general, as much easy as you can keep it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the chat, and there's quite a few questions on the integration of HVAC, TPS in the databases, and especially the BSO, and whether the BSO will be able to show operation compliance with expectations or not on this point. Andreas, do you want to pick that up?
I'm actually not sure the BSO is really a compliance checking tool. It's really more meant to be a database that is showing what member states have, and to make it comparable and really to see the time series. But I think so far, at least, it's not meant to be a compliance checker. Bogdan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's probably also your opinion.
No, you're perfectly right. It's intended to be exactly what it is written, to be a positive thing. I don't know why sometimes we are tempted to see negative things in every good things coming or new things coming. It's far from being a compliance instrument, doesn't have the necessary ingredients for that. And anyway, we have a parallel compliance with our transposition process to check with the member states. No, this is exactly what is written there, to stimulate the member states to make use of the data available, as I said, to structure and collect them systematically, and at the same time at the EU level, to start having a better image about what's happened in the member states. And as you can see, we started even with top-level information. This is far from being sufficient to check compliance. Aggregates at country level, but means nothing. I know. I'm wondering what you can say. No way.
We're starting to discuss also the use and who's the sort of target audience for those databases. We talked a lot about member states, and it's true that has been a tool that's been lacking, especially during the negotiations on the EPBD, for example, and it'll be a very useful one for the monitoring of policies, the elaboration of more granular policies at national level. Do you have some feedback on who's using your databases and for what? I mean, Roy, you talked a bit about it during your presentation. Can you share a bit more? And Andreas, Antoine, and Daniel, maybe?
Dan, you'd like to start?
Okay. Well, our model, behavioral model, is used basically by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Agenda in order to develop the National Building Renovation Plan. And we are testing in this model many of the indicators or the limits that are included in the EPBD, like all of these percentages, the 16%, 26%. So we are trying this in a country that have very different climate zones. So we have to analyze how things affect every region and different uses. So it's not the same on residential that in hotels. And you should also know that we have like a special area for tourism that we have to analyze how these things impact there. So at the moment, we are just there trying to help the ministry to fulfill this national renovation plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Andreas?
I'd like to briefly add that I think we've seen today in this webinar that member states can really learn a lot from each other, and that the BSO is really also facilitating this learning from each other. And maybe also not everybody in this webinar is aware that there is already a forum where member states exchange on the implementation of the EPBD. It's called the Concerted Action EPBD. And member states also during the past years had exchange on best practice examples, also really avoiding to reinvent the wheel all the time, and really just building on good examples that other member states have implemented. And I think that's certainly something that is again driven and enforced by the new EPBD, that this collaboration between member states will be even more enhanced than it has happened already during the past 3 years in the concerted action EPBD. And I'm sure the next meetings they will also have the BSO on the agenda and how to fill it with data by minimizing the effort that is needed by learning from each other.
Thank you very much. Looking at the time, we're approaching the end of the allocated time for the webinar. Many thanks to all the presenters. It's been really useful, and obviously the presentations will be made available. I'll hand back the floor to the moderation for the end. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dimitris, I think you were meant to have the final word.
Yes, of course. I mean, how can I say? We can all agree that data is very important. I think Annette mentioned that from the very beginning, and maybe we have underestimated a little bit the need for good quality information, for reliable data that we can use for better policy making. I mean, think about it that based on this data, for example, member state national authorities will design the building renovation plans, and based on these plans, they will design, let's say, the needs and the programs for the future. Same for the NACP, for everything. So the projects that will be implemented in the future will be based on some strategies that will be based on some data. So without high quality and complete building stock data, we might have some significant economic and policy risks. The EPBD is a game changer, no question about it, and will definitely improve the quality of data and the reliability, especially when it goes to the UBSO. And that is why, as Bogdan mentioned before, it really provides the legal framework for member states to build something for the future, and ensuring comparability, transparency, and a collective approach for the methodologies. From my experience, I still think that we can do more, that there is potential for improving or the, let's say, collection process. This is what we are talking about. We need consistency for the data. It's very, very important. It's not only about having some sources here and there. We need to make clear arrangements between institutions, interoperability frameworks, accountability mechanisms, and many other data governance structure, so that we make sure that this is not a one-off project. We do it for reporting in 2027, and then again we have to do something for 2029. There are many available tools around and different approaches. For example, AI could also be something to explore. Satellite images, statistical analysis and modeling. But again, all this can only unfold their full potential as part of a holistic methodology, if you want to ensure consistency. That is why I think that it is important as the next steps, in the future, to explore all these different approaches, but also to work together. And I'm happy to see that SINEA, Annette mentioned at the beginning that SINEA plans to also build something about a data cluster, similar to what is there for the smart readiness indicator and for EPCs. I know from my own experience participating in this cluster that this is super useful. And there are many projects around that may have the solutions to some of the problems that national authorities have at the moment. So it is important that we all work together on that, together with DG Enea, SINEA, Elstat, Eurostat, if you ask me, and other national authorities, trying to build, a systemic and consistent data collection strategy. So you can also see here the timeline reflected before Bogdan's slides. The deadline for the draft of the building renovation plans is already there, so end of the year. So it is important to see what is there and then see how this will be actually reflected in the following requirements, like the final national building renovation plan, 15 March, the first transfer of data to the EUB. So, by the way, I think this is the deadline for the NACP reporting. I suppose it's not a coincidence, but it has something to do. And finally, you can also find, the QR code for a survey we're planning Observe. It would be good if you could already have your feedback, your reflections about the data process, the needs. It is, as I said, it is important to also have feedback and make all this data collection process aligned with national strategies and also, national policy needs. So that would be all from my side. Thank you all very much. It was very interesting. I think very useful. Thank to everybody who took this effort to make this webinar work. It wasn't that easy. I'm sure that we are on the right path to have better quality data, and hopefully in the next years everything will be totally different. Many thanks to all of you, and as we said, we will share the presentation, the slides, and the recording.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
All the
Have a
best.
good day all.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Absolutely.